I really have to start by thanking downtown Seattle. It's wonderful to have an excuse to come back to one of my favorite cities, and I'm not just saying that. My wife and I were actually just here for New Year's Eve to participate in the fantastic New Year's Eve party at EMP, if there's anyone from EMP here today, and to take in the final game of the season of your Seahawks. So I may not be wearing my jersey, it's at home right now, but I am a 12th man, I assure you. There's a lot of different things I could have talked about in my very fast 18 minutes, and I decided to talk about the most controversial aspect, one of the toughest aspects of progressive downtown city making, which is what I call density done well. And it's important right off the bat to distinguish this from random and arbitrary density just through market forces or what have you. This is deliberate density. This is not density done poorly, which unfortunately has become quite common in downtowns across North America. So I'm very deliberate in terms of what I mean by that, and I thought it would be useful to your local discussion to talk about what that really means, the power of it, but particularly how to do it, because that's the real challenge. And for those of you who are on Twitter, these are my Twitter coordinates. I thought I'd start by stoking your competitive fires by pointing out all the great accolades Vancouver gets. But I could easily do a talk in Vancouver and start off with a list of accolades that Seattle gets. I actually think that competition between cities is very healthy. If there isn't a bit of envy when you see something that other cities are doing well, then what's the incentive for you to be doing better? So officially, Vancouver wants to be the best at everything and is very good at many things like livability and a reputation and visitable, even one of the top coffee cities, which I think we're behind you on, and I think it's only because we have just second to you the most number of Starbucks on our corners. But it shows that when you start to get the ball rolling on success, boy, you can be ranked and you can be applauded for a surprising number of things. And given that I'm not the chief planner of Vancouver anymore, my goal is actually not to have Vancouver win. I would like all of us to be competing with each other and end up in a wonderful and marvelous tie. But all of us are doing better because we feel that envy when we see something smartly done in other cities. The incentive to do things is also rather ominous, and Hurricane Sandy, I think, was a game changer in terms of really bringing home to a North American audience, because when I travel and speak around the world gets it. It's North America that has been behind the ball in terms of the implications of climate change. But the truth is, we in Vancouver have been knowing about this for many, many years, and in fact, when I did eco-density, we started with this image that actually shows that downtown living is good for the planet. 1.5 tons per person generated of greenhouse gas emissions in the downtown, and it goes from 3 to 5 and 6 and even to 8 or 9 tons per person as you go out into the region. So it starts off with the realization that when you're talking about downtown density and downtown living, it's good for the planet. It also helps you solve many other issues that all of us as city builders are facing, whether it's housing affordability, which is huge in Vancouver certainly, rising costs of energy and the energy security issues, climate change, aging population, public health issues and epidemics that are strongly being connected through our health professional friends to urban form and urban living and how we get around and how we live within our urban environments. And increasingly the recognition that as we densify, we're feeling a risk of a loss of civic identity. All of the density is starting to look the same, and this is a fundamental problem for us, or challenge for us as cities. But there are ways that you can do it well. I like to start off by showing what you can do in just one generation of city building in Vancouver. This is 1983 to 2003. One generation. This isn't China. This isn't a place in the world where it's known for being incredibly rampant growth. This is your neighbor, and it shows how much can happen in one generation, and hopefully it happens well in one generation, because what it really illustrates is you can do a lot of good or a lot of damage within just one generation if you don't have the right planning and vision in place and the right value set shaping and sculpting your urbanism. And to show just one more example, certainly within the context of my time at City Hall, this is from 1983 to 2011, and what it basically shows is the The growth has continued. We're over 100,000 people within our downtown peninsula, over 7,000 children within our downtown peninsula, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Our goal in the past has been living first. My predecessor, Larry Beasley, coined that term to stress what was missing within downtown areas, and what was missing was housing. But increasingly, that's an overly simplistic message. So when I came along, I started to talk about the downtown that works and the complete downtown, because we were at a point in our balance where, yes, we wanted more housing, but we didn't want it to push out jobs. We didn't want it to be at the expense of vibrancy and thriving nightlife and all these kinds of things that can sometimes clash with livability. So the art is a complete downtown that works from all different perspectives: sustainable, resilient, livable, healthy, vibrant, and so on. And it works just not for seniors and singles, which unfortunately is the way that much of the downtown growth has occurred in North America, but it's couples and it's families, particularly families. I said 7,000 kids within our downtown area. That's not by accident, that is by design. We require 25% of all units be family-friendly, 2 bedrooms or more. We design the public realm for kids, because if it works for kids, it works for everyone. We build schools, we build daycare, etc., to facilitate family living. If you're not getting your kids, and I hear you're doing reasonably well, I heard the figure 3,000 children within the downtown area. That's pretty great by North American standards. But if you're not getting more, it's because you're not building a downtown that's actually friendly for families. Dispel the myth that families will not live downtown. We're the proof of that, but you have to design your downtown to accommodate families. Much of the attention now is on the millennials. The 20 to 35-year-olds, they are embracing urban living like no other generation. But if you don't design for families for them, as soon as they have kids, they may leave. So this is still a fundamental part of the thought process for a successful downtown. What I call the magic of density done well has many components. I probably don't need to convince many of you in the audience, even though downtown, our density is very controversial. The third rail of municipal politics, the D word. We know that there are many, many reasons to do it. Reducing energy use in buildings, allowing active transport like walking, biking, and transit. It makes green design options like district energy in particular viable, which is a powerful opportunity for city building. Less sprawl, more affordable housing choices, improved public health related to urban form and mobility, vitality, diversity, safety, everything that used to be vilified about urban living. We now have the data and the stats to prove that density actually supports all of these positive results if you do it well. When we talked about eco-density for 2 years in Vancouver, the goal was to actually reposition the D word, to say that density is not bad for the environment, like some people even in Vancouver still believed, but that it's the critical component to a sustainable and healthy downtown and city. So over 2 years, we transformed the language around density, and boy, that was hard. If you think it's easy in Vancouver, you're dreaming. Density is a tough discussion anywhere, but we did the hard discussion, transformed the narrative and the discussion, and now everything is not easy, but it's easier than it used to be because we start from a common frame of reference that density is a good thing, and thus the challenge is how to do it well. After that, our Mayor Gregor Robertson launched the Greenest City Initiative, so officially we are trying to be the greenest city in the world by 2020, and I hope you compete with us for that ranking. We've had the benefit of some powerful opportunities that we can shape our city building around, Expo 86, and more recently the Olympics in 2010. And this has been a powerful opportunity for us to think not about tourism and such, which are very important from certain people's perspective, but from our perspective, a city building example about how to build our city better for the long term. And one of the most powerful ways is how we use the public realm in a street activation way, because the Olympics was a game changer. Look at that crowd down in Granville Street, which is our living room. It's transformed the way the public thinks about the public realm in our downtown. This happens to be when Canada beat the US in overtime for the hockey gold, or as we like to call it, one of the best moments in Canadian history. But any kind of event can transform the way that the public thinks about their streets. And this is such a key part of placemaking and city building within our downtown area. So 3 components of density done well that I'm going to run through as quickly as I can. The first and most important is the alignment of land use and transportation. Too often still in downtowns and cities across North America in particular, we are separating these functions and failing at both. In Vancouver, for generations, we've been aligning land use and mobility to do progressive city building. It started with the most important decision ever made in Vancouver, which was saying no to the freeways. We didn't have to have a debate about burying our transportation infrastructure because we never built it in the first place. Here's what it would have done to our downtown and our waterfront, lobotomizing the downtown in the same way that your Alaska Way viaduct cut off your waterfront from your city. And I think it's wonderful, by the way, that you're burying the viaducts. A very, very important city-making decision. I only regret that you're putting them underground and spending all that money on them instead of just getting rid of them. And what we've found in our city building, magically, is that when you get rid of that infrastructure, the city doesn't just still work, it works better. And I know that's a tough, counterintuitive way of thinking, but we are the proof of that. The best transportation plan is a great land use plan. We say this in Vancouver, and it's not just our planners saying this, it's our engineers saying this, it's our transportation experts saying this, and they get it. Because when you do density and mix and design well, you get more active transportation modes, not just available. And I see even in your downtown plan, it talks about efficient modes of transportation. It's got to be more than present and efficient. Well, there's the bike lane over there painted on the asphalt, and there's the bus. You can take it if you want. It's got to be inviting. It's got to be not just viable, it's got to be inviting. And for us, density and land use mix is the basis of that. This is what powerfully Vancouver chose to do in the late 1990s in the game-changing transportation plan. We stopped talking about balancing modes because that is a myth. If you balance modes, the car wins. And if the car wins, you have a car-dominated environment because the other choices aren't viable, let alone inviting. In Vancouver, we prioritize walking, then biking, then transit, then goods movement, including accessing trucks into the downtown to keep the businesses running, and then the single occupancy vehicle, or even the progressive modes or methods of car, whether it's car share or carpooling or electric vehicles or what have you. Because the greenest car in the world is still a problem from certain perspectives, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it's important to say we have mostly avoided this mythology of the war on the car. It's a very damaging and unhealthy mythology. We're not anti-car, we're pro-city, we're pro-mode choice. And we know that if you prioritize modes this way, all modes work better, including the car. That's the game changer. There's no city that has ever been successful planning for the car and making it work well for the car. Pretty counterintuitive, right? But you actually fail when you try to do that. When you plan a multimodal city, it works better for everyone, including drivers. For us, it starts with the power of nearness, as I call it, putting everything proximate to each other so that you have choices on how to do things without going far distances. You don't even need to think about transit, for example. You can think about just getting there by foot power. We emphasize in every detail and aspect of our design the quality of the walking experience. The city at eye level at 5 kilometers an hour, as my friend Jan Gale puts it, because that's the walking infrastructure. Blank walls are killer to walkability, and you've got a lot of blank walls in your downtown. I tweeted some yesterday to illustrate the point. The most important thing you could do is do what we've essentially done, which is to essentially ban blank walls. It's not quite true because there are some, but having that attitude is the key to walkability. We, like many other cities, have had this renaissance for us earlier than most on cycling. The only thing I'm going to say about urban cycling is one simple message. If you take it seriously, you need to separate your bike lanes. Period, full stop. I know that's controversial in downtown businesses. My own downtown business community in Vancouver opposed bike lanes to a certain extent, although it was always a bit of a nuanced opposition. I know this is controversial for businesses, but there is no city that has ever grown its bike share without separating. Because you know what? If you want 8 to 80 people riding, if you want women and seniors and kids, all three of those groups are smarter than adult males. Adult males are willing to ride in essentially unsafe conditions. Women, seniors, and kids aren't stupid. So you have to make it actually smart as a choice. If you think that it's easy in Vancouver, this is a newspaper that every year rates and ranks things based on public vote. Best use of taxpayers' money in that year, bike lanes. Worst use of taxpayer money in that year, bike lanes. So it's a very polarizing thing even in Vancouver, but our council and our mayor have proceeded forward anyway, which shows a lot of political bravery. This has been the result. 75% more people living in the downtown, 26% more jobs in the downtown, 15% more people and trips entering in the downtown, but 25% fewer vehicles. A lower percentage of trips and a lower number of absolute vehicles, and people actually report it's easier to drive into the downtown. Counterintuitive, but when you design for the car fails. Even if you could have a perfectly green car, which is non-existent, by the way, it's kind of like clean coal. It doesn't exist. But even if you could, this is the problem. It's fundamentally a space problem in your downtown and in your city. You can't fit everything if everything is by car. And essentially, the other modes of traffic make the cities work better because it's a space problem. And by the way, car share is great. I saw the car-to-go thing because one car share replaces 20 cars out on the road taking up space. So powerful game changer in terms of city making. The second aspect is high design quality. We make no apologies for the fact we've got a very high design standard for architecture, public realm design, etc. And that's actually good for the market, good for the economy. And the developers actually do recognize that. For us, cities design starts with waterfront design. You note the high towers on the water. We're not afraid of height in Vancouver. But we design it deliberately with separation and sunlight access and privacy and view protection, both slot views and public protected views, over 20 protected views to the mountains, all sorts of policy and values that go into the regulation of towers. It's not a yes or no, it's a how you do it. And we don't do it everywhere, by the way. This is what we're avoiding and what we've successfully avoided in Vancouver. We don't do vertical sprawl. Vertical sprawl is like these buildings where you come down the elevator, get into your car in the parking garage, and vomit out onto the expressway. We don't do that. We come down, and essentially vertical sprawl is about the design of the community. It's not about the height of the building. For us, it's about designing always for placemaking, the artful mix at eye level, designing both human scale and tall towers. We don't debate which is better. We do both, and we mix them in all sorts of different contexts. We also mix things that are hard to mix, like big box retailing. I'm thrilled to see your city Target. This is your next generation, though. A Home Depot, 3 mid-box retailers, a grocery store, residential above, and the key liner shops along the street. So you have no blank walls and no dead space on your urban street edge, which is so important. We've learned a lot about mid-rise to show that we're not a one-trick pony just doing tall towers. We've actually been doing mid-rise well for years. This is our Athletes Village, which was an absolute game changer, the greenest community in North America, according to the U.S. Green Building Council, with the largest district energy system in North America, a huge game changer in terms of not just integrating land use and transportation, but also energy into the urban form-making process. Excuse me. The third aspect is amenities. If you're doing density and you don't have the amenities that make that density livable, you're just crowding people. So it's about amenity and design, making that density enjoyable through things like, these are all the things that developers and development has actually paid for in Vancouver. Parks and civic spaces and all sorts of places and things like community centers, heritage preservation, daycare, etc., all through private development. So we leverage the activity of the marketplace to build a great city, and that's a powerful, powerful model. Just as I end, I'm going to talk briefly about the fact that you have to think about the density not just within your downtown, but around it. Think about the neighborhoods that feed and strengthen the downtown, what we call gentle density, invisible density, hidden density, all sorts of different forms and scales of density close to and walkable to your downtown area, so don't just think about the towers. We're not afraid of towers, but we're not a one-trick pony in Vancouver. We do all forms of density, including small density. We know you're investigating and doing some interesting work on coach houses, as you call them, I think. For us, we've got over 800 approved, so you can get doing that faster. And it's powerful, a small transformation, but a powerful one. So for us, as we work hard, will Vancouver be just a livable city, a smart city, a greenest city? We want to be a complete city with a complete downtown for people. The question for you is, what will downtown Seattle be? Thank you very much again for the invitation. It's a thrill to be here.